So this is Defin episode number 60. And next week, hopefully by the time you hear this one, I think we're celebrating our anniversary or something. When was it? 2016 May something. We started our first episode.
I don't know. To be honest, I recently forgot my wife's and my wedding anniversary. So, remembering Defin's anniversary is definitely going to get me in trouble, The good thing was that she forgot the anniversary as well. So we were kind of
You got lucky.
She remembered first though, which is annoying. It was the day after though. So yeah.
Oh man.
That's a sign of us getting old, maybe. I don't know.
How many years, Ray?
I think we've been married for 26 years now, actually. 26.
Oh wow.
So
okay.
It wasn't as important as the last one, the 25. So.
Yeah. Some arbitrary number that is way more important.
Oh, yeah.
than the other number.
Well, it's divided by 5, so obviously it's more religiously significant and, just generally better. So shut up.
Okay. I don't know what your religious beliefs are, but okay. Anyway, coming back to...
I'm a believer in random number generation, and that's...
Exactly. So, welcome to Defin anniversary edition. I think when we were talking about this, I think Wouter was commenting, are we aging like dogs in terms of podcasts? And so probably we are 21 or something now. Anyway, but I think the nicest part is that we have an amazing guest coming back again from our, when was it? I think 24th episode, and then now it is 60th one. Yeah. I don't care. Okay, welcome to the episode, David. It's good to have you back again.
Hi, it's good to be back again.
Yes. So, what is cooking in the closure script land, or how are you doing?
We're doing good.
How are you doing? How are you doing first, maybe? Because it's like we're living in some strange times here.
I'm doing okay. I'm trying just like everybody else. Trying to stay safe, quarantining. Trying to follow the guidelines, and in spite of all the craziness at the higher levels of the American government, as we're all aware.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been good. I've been, as with some other people, been lucky. I still have work, and I'm still able to. Actually, because of the quarantining, I actually have the past couple months I've had a lot more time actually to sort of free time to direct towards closure script. So that's good.
So I think there is some new happenings around the closure script land, right? First of all, I think, Cognitect started sponsoring. So I think a big shout out to them, I think. That's the latest news from Cognitect and from closure script land.
Yeah, that was cool. I mean, as closure script's it's not young anymore.
Yeah.
Closure script is 3 years younger than Closure, right? So Closure appeared in 2000 or maybe 4 actually. Yeah, 4, because I think Closure appeared in 2007. Closure script appeared in 2011. So yeah, Closure's been around for 13 years, right? Is that right? 13 years. And Closure script in May or so, July, I guess it'll be 9 years. So it was really just, Mike Fikes and I have sort of become the de facto maintainers, and we were, we spend a lot of time just managing tickets and going through issues, releases, website stuff. And, it's not like, it's like any open source project. It's not our main gig. It's just something we do. But, after 9 years, I was, chatting with Mike and saying, I think we should approach Cognitect actually, or just write them an email saying, we'd be interested in being, as other open source projects are, as sort of taking on sponsorship. And Cognitect was like, not only is that a great idea, and that makes perfect sense, but we're more than happy to be the first people to sort of announce support for that. So that was really actually, to be honest, unexpected. And that's really nice on their part and generous. So it's a good start to, just making sure that, Mike and I, like Mike's been working on it for 6 years. I've been working on it for 9. Just, it's just a certain level of support to contribute to sustainability, which is a good thing.
How is the support being paid for, David? Is it via the GitHub stuff?
So to the GitHub sponsors is exactly right. So people just send either Mike or myself, some amount of money. We basically, Rich Hickey did this sponsorship thing. I don't know, like last year or something, late last year, and we just modeled it after him, which is that the basic idea is
Yeah.
if you're a hobbyist or contributor, pay whatever you want, $1, $5, it really doesn't matter. That's just a personal thing. It's really more about companies who have budgets, who are already spending X amount of money on infrastructure and this and that. And if ClojureScript is a core part of their product, then send us $50 a month or $25 a month, whatever makes sense for the size of your company.
Yeah. So it's almost, I think, we can say decade, right? Almost like a decade of existence of ClojureScript. So when you look back, the beginning of the projects and then now, so how do you see that?
A lot of the change is it has nothing really to do, in some sense, it has everything to do with ClojureScript in the end, because for people that are using it. But a lot of the changes are just around the fact that JavaScript changed, right? In 2011, Node.js was only 2 years old, right? Maybe it was 3, but I think it was only 2. So and you couldn't really use Node for web development yet. There was like weird things, but it wasn't that common. A lot of people were using this thing called Bower, which was like libraries that are packaged to be used from NPM, but you couldn't just use things from NPM. Anyways, it's just a different world. At this point, I would say, like, what's going to be installed on a machine that's up in the cloud? It's going to be Java or Node, right? It's like, like all the cloud stuff is either Node or JVM stuff. So at this point, I think Node is essential technology. It's essential technology, and people really expect to build client-oriented applications directly from NPM. And, we sort of tried many things, and this past release, I think a week ago now, or maybe 2 weeks, I can't really exactly remember because we've been working on it for a bit, addresses that world, that reality, that people need to be able to use stuff from NPM, and it needs to be easy. It hasn't really been easy. It's been possible, of course. There's many ways to do it, but it's never been straightforward. And so with the last release, we have this new thing called the bundle target that finally is like, anybody can make this work. And the response has been very positive, and people seem generally excited about it. So it's good.
How do you contrast that with things like Shadow CLJS and other efforts around ClojureScript?
So Shadow's a great project. It's mostly led by Thomas Heller. He's the maintainer of that project. He's been at that project for a long time now. It's basically a custom build tool. It simply takes the core parts of the compiler, and it has its own build system. And it's for a long time now, it's supported building things from Node modules. But the thing is that in order to do it, you have to use Shadow. So that without ClojureScript supporting it in a fundamental way, it meant that, okay, you can accomplish said goal with Shadow by itself, but you could never, for example, build a ClojureScript project that depends on a Node module that can be used from any ClojureScript build tool, right? There was think about Clojure. With Clojure, I can say my Clojure library has a dependency on these Java libraries, and nobody that writes Clojure cares about this problem. Like, you don't care that this library depends on 5 Java libs. You know it's going to work, and basically for a very long time, that's not been true for ClojureScript. And really, Shadow couldn't really address that problem, because if it's not addressed at the bottom, it's not really addressed at all, right? You can build applications, but you can't really distribute libraries unless everybody's building with Shadow. And so doing the bundle target, you can build with anything. You could build with LineCLJS build. You can build with Figwheel. You can build with Shadow. You can build with ClojureScript by itself. Any ClojureScript tool can handle the bundle target because it's at the bottom.
So it's more pushing it to the code level rather than just having another layer.
Yeah, and there's benefits. I mean, as Ray knows, full disclosure, I work with Ray. I'm Ray's coworker, right? So we work together at Vouch, and
I think my sympathies, but yeah,
coming onto Vouch was like, they were
keep it
doing
professional, PJ.
Yeah.
What the fuck? I mean, just because we just crossed 4 years, we're supposed to be professional now.
Yeah.
Oh man, never tell him you work with me, David. Jesus, it's like
yeah. But so
sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
So at Vouch, they were leaning heavily on Node, and they were doing a lot of React Native stuff. And actually, I was at Cognitect for 4 years, and the Cognitect work was very interesting. It was really great. But actually, I never had the opportunity to work on things that were not purely browser stuff. And that's only unfortunate, not for Cognitect, but it's unfortunate as the maintainer of ClojureScript that it was hard for me to see the pain around Node or the pain around React Native or Node modules. And working at Vouch for the past year, it's been like, oh man, this stuff needs fixing fast. I mean, I really know in the time I've been at Vouch, a large number of fixes around using Node as a target, and of course now using Node modules. These are directly correlated to me seeing the pain points from the point of view of somebody who has to use this stuff every day for that particular use case.
So do you think now ClojureScript is more or less becoming like a competitor to Clojure in terms of the whole stack development? Because Clojure, you can't do front end anyway, right? So ClojureScript started as mostly as the front end thing and then slowly seeping into the quote unquote back end, which is node driven stuff. So ClojureScript can become like whole stack language, or
it could, but the thing is, I constantly, my theory has always been, what happens is always like, I feel like this is what happens. Like people who are like doing JavaScript stuff, they dabble in ClojureScript, and they're like, man, this is cool. And then they like start dabbling with Clojure. It's like, oh, it's just like ClojureScript, but I have real threads, real concurrency constructs. And to be honest, I actually think Node and Node tooling has surpassed Java in complexity. Like, it's not like let's be completely honest. It's not that I love Java, but you cannot claim with a straight face that Node is simpler than Java. I find a lot of the tooling and the documentation to be just as obtuse as anything from Java, and in many cases worse. So my feeling is that ClojureScript ideally is a way for people to do full stack ClojureScript. You can do full stack ClojureScript if you want, but I just think you eventually will say, why not just use Clojure and then use it? It's like, I get to do all these things I can't do in a single threaded runtime. And of course you can still do, this is the thing about Java people, right? Java people realize it's not async versus threads. I mean, that was always like a kind of a false argument. In Java, especially modern Java, you can combine multi-threading and asynchronous programming. It's not an either-or thing. At Vouch, I think we use Node when it makes sense, where the Java just isn't going to work for us. But JVM, is what I mean. But most of our backend services are with the JVM, and I think we're okay with that.
Yeah, and I think also the ecosystem on Node is like, it used to be quite simple, but now Node itself is getting fragmented and complicated. Like you have NPM and you have Yarn and you have other things, that make it sort of, it makes it the whole thing complicated. And I think also, to be honest, I don't think the ClojureScript story on the Node backend is very good at the moment. There's not a lot of libraries that actually integrate directly with, Express or something like that. I think there's, what is it called? Macchiato?
Yeah, there is Macchiato, and that seems...
It's a test framework, right?
No.
I'm not saying
Macchiato
this.
is
It's
like
a good library, you know.
Mhm.
no. Macchiato I thought was a wrapper. It's like a lightweight web server thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
Node.
that's
okay.
what I mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. So there's not many. There's not much. There aren't many games in town on the server side for Node.js with ClojureScript, is what I mean.
Yeah.
That ecosystem isn't, very big.
It's not very big. And again, it's again, this is back to my impression that, I mean, there are other reasons for this too, right? Serverless is getting bigger, right? I feel like if you're doing a
Yeah.
lightweight thing, you're probably going serverless anyway. There's a lot of services to directly deploy these node applications to the,
Yeah.
like, you can build a serverless node thing, and it's like it's becoming trivial. So I think there are many reasons why you're not seeing a lot um, of the affordances or things that we're used to in
Mm.
the Clojure and JVM world. But again, it's really my opinion that um, that it just hasn't remained a very big thing, and the survey really reflects this. The survey, it's still like
Mm.
80% of users are using ClojureScript for web stuff. So
Yeah.
that's front end web stuff.
One of the things that interests me, David, and something that we've looked at work as well, but not to get too detailed into work, but is the CLJC stuff. That's something which is, I see that coming more and more in a lot of libraries and a lot of, the ecosystem where, like to your point, VJ, where the Clojure and ClojureScript stuff, if you use CLJC, it's becoming a little bit easier to kind of cross the boundary a little bit. I don't know how you feel about that, David.
No, I don't. I mean, I think it's great. I mean, the CLJC, it's a massive time saver, right? There's many cases
Mm.
you're building business logic. You need to do something with buffers. There's just so many cases where you need the same logic on both the client and the server. And the fact that people are taking the time to build CLJC libraries really proves that everybody needs this. Everybody has this problem, and that
Yeah.
library designers are doing the right thing and providing these libraries in two format, like in one file as two formats. I think it's great. I mean,
Mm.
I think that was what we expected would happen, and it's really nice to see, especially the more mature libraries do CLJC, and then it's really
Yeah.
it's not much effort for the user to use something that works in both places. I think it's just a net win.
Do you think the ClojureScript stuff that you've changed recently helps that as well?
No, not really, because I mean the bundle stuff is it's really just about, I just want to be able to use, like, let's actually state one more thing, that because this is we sort of glossed over something
Right.
about the bundle target, which is that what the bundle target really lets you do, it lets you take any JavaScript based tool that will build for the web. It doesn't really matter if it's Webpack. There are many competing tools that do this. They all work the same way. They resolve the require, like require is a statement in Node that lets you import a library. They all take the require
Mhm.
statements and then produce a single concatenated JavaScript file. That's effectively what they do, right? So every time you have a require, instead of that being a dynamic require in the Node runtime, it's going to be a static require in the bundled thing that gets loaded on a web page. Now,
Mm.
that's how it works. But what's happened is that what are users actually doing? Users are making libraries that are written in ES6. They're written in with advanced features which may or may not be in the browser, right? They may
Yeah.
be importing style sheets. They may be importing images. There's all these
Yeah.
statements in the JavaScript files that you're importing that we
Mm.
can't possibly process. Like, we can't process this stuff.
Mm.
It's like we're not going to take 5 years of our time trying to understand every possible pattern that exists in a JavaScript
Mhm.
library. But the bundle target just gets rid of that problem. What we say is there are too many practices in place, too many idioms that we can't possibly handle. So what we do is we say we're in our simple, immutable, functional world. The thing that we produce can then be fed into the bundler, and the bundler can handle all this other stuff that we never want to see that stuff. We never want to have to think about it.
Mm.
It's very much this closure strategy of, let's have our simple core, which is our code that we've generated. We compiled to JavaScript. Let something else deal with all this other stuff. We're not going to do anything. And again, it's because it's become impractical. Webpack and these other build tools, they just have to handle too many cases, and we're just not. We don't have the time. I mean, simply, we don't have the time and the sort of people power to make that work. So it's just logical to, pass the buck on to the tools that can handle it.
Yeah, especially the native dependencies where you're like compiling into libuv and stuff like this. This is crazy. Yeah, how would you deal with that?
Can't deal with that stuff. And again, I mean, something that's never been. I haven't had time to talk about it, but a lot of the reasons we ended up here was because of work I was doing at Vouch. We were using Renatal. And Renatal is a really great tool. It's been out for 4 or 5. It's almost, I feel like, shortly after React Native appeared. Maybe it was 6-8 months. So it's been out for a while.
Yeah.
I think 4 years. And we use it to build our mobile app. And Renatal is a great tool. It solves the problem, but there are many things about it that were like unidiomatic for a Clojure or ClojureScript user. I mean, the tool itself is written in CoffeeScript, which is a bit strange if for contribution, because most ClojureScript people, some of them are not even JavaScript experts, right? They're mostly Clojure experts. Yeah. They know enough JavaScript to get the job done. But then, an even smaller population knows CoffeeScript. So it was the code base is a bit unidiomatic. And also it was built on as a line plugin, which makes it hard now that, at least at Vouch, we moved to Deps Eden. And then finally, the API was definitely not very Clojure-y, right? Because it was a sort of stateful API. You had to issue stateful commands. It was easy to be am I working on Android or am I working with Figwheel? There were all these things you had to do. And I, talked to the team at Vouch and said, I think in basically a 4 or 5 weeks time, I can make a thing that does what Renatal does, and it will fit much better with our workflow. But before we talk about that, which we can talk about in a second, when I started doing that, I was like, wait a second, I'm solving this other problem, which is the Webpack bundler problem. And I actually hit the brakes. I hit the brakes. It actually solved all the parts. And I spent a couple days to port the essential critical components over to ClojureScript so that everybody could use it. And in fact, the tool that I built, which is called Krell, actually uses the bundle target. So this is the other reason why it's big. It shows you that it's not about Webpack, it's not about Metro, which is the React Native thing. It's literally about the entire universe of bundlers that can handle Node modules. Any sort of Node style bundler can use our output, and that's really looking into the future, because we don't really know if it's going to be Webpack or Foopack, right? Who knows?
Whatever.
Who knows? JavaScript is every day it's something different. So we're just getting ourselves out of that game, being like, we know Node's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. So whatever flavor of bundler, cool. Our thing is it's not about Webpack. It's not about Metro. It's just prepared to allow you to apply any bundler that you want.
So tell us more about the tool that you're talking about. Cool.
Yeah, so Krell is it's
Krell?
It's
I
Krell.
think you should enunciate it, David.
Yeah, probably.
Krell.
Yeah.
That's Krell, like Krell. It's the the alien. It's like the long lost alien race from the movie The Forbidden Planet.
Okay.
Obviously.
Yes. And it's a play on words.
It's
because,
very clear.
Because React Native, it's kind of like, React Native is like this native thing. And I was like, yeah, we're going to make this alien Lisp thing and stick it inside of your native thing. And, it's also like, if you follow Lisp, there used to be this really great Lisp is alien technology logo. So it's kind of a nod towards these older sort of Lisp alien stuff. If you've ever looked at Conrad Barsky's books, Land of Lisp, all these aliens.
Lisp aliens,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's definitely playing into that. If you're a modular synthesis nerd, there's also a famous modular synthesis patch called the Krell patch, But that patch is actually based off the Forbidden Planet. The people, I can't remember their names. It's so sad. I should have memorized their names. The people that worked on the soundtrack, they would make these electronic circuits. And the soundtrack was composed of multi-tracking these little circuits that would make these sounds, and they would eventually burn out. So they were like life forms. This little circuit would play this weird space alien sound, and it would keep evolving, and they would just run the tape and record as much of it as they could. And then the circuit would die, it would just burn out, and then they'd have to go melt or whatever, and they'd go make a new circuit, and the new circuit would make a weird, crazy sound. And then they edited the entire soundtrack from all these weird circuits that had this very like limited lifespan, but produces beautiful, unpredictable patches, unpredictable sounds.
I think this is like the best pitch for a tool or a library in programming languages. It's nothing about what the tool does, but the entire history is so important. And then people are like, damn it, I have to use this one right now. Why? Because it's from the Forbidden Alien, auto-destroying thing that David said.
I think maybe it's going to burn out all the circuits on people's computers. Is that your idea?
Oh, sorry, your computer melted. No.
What you were warned, You have this end user licensing agreement for Krell. Anyway, let's back onto the actual pitch.
Yes.
Yeah. So it really is. So the main idea is that I wanted it to be Deps Eden friendly. And by Deps Eden friendly, I mean, really, it means it's friendly. You can use it with Leiningen, you can use it with Boot, you can use it with anything. I mean, if you're Deps friendly, you're really friendly with any tool. And the other thing is that I wanted it to be zero configuration, meaning that I didn't want to have to talk about Android versus iOS. There's a lot of stateful stuff around that. I also just wanted to make a thing that had almost no dependencies. Krell, I think, only has 2. We use a open source directory watcher, which is fast on all platforms, including OS X, which is harder to find. So I wanted something that could build quickly on all platforms, the watcher anyway. And then it just relies on ClojureScript. It has no dependencies. It doesn't use WebSockets. It doesn't use TCP servers. So a lot of times with a lot of these tools, if they don't bundle in their own WebSocket implementation, then there's a conflict with Java stuff. Anyways, as you know, it becomes a hassle. So Krell just uses a TCP socket to your device, and that's it. And it basically re-implements what Renatal did. Renatal used Figwheel, but Figwheel actually is a largish library because it does a lot of things. And I felt like actually a TCP socket based REPL is all you need for developing React Native. You don't need all this web feature stuff. And so that's really how it works. It means that there's not much code to read. There's not much to see. I mean, it's in total, I think half the code is JavaScript to Bootstrap, and the other half is Clojure and ClojureScript. I think it's 600 lines of Clojure and ClojureScript. There's 600 lines of ClojureScript and Clojure. So it's quite tiny, and it means that it's pretty easy to review. I'm also the opinion that you make a thing, and basically the goal as an open source maintainer is, how can I make a thing that's done? How can I make something that's just that you work on it for a year or maybe a year total, and then you're like, after that, it's just maintenance. Like ideally, actually for Krell, in the next month or two, there won't be any updates except for updates for React Native. Like that would be the goal. That Krell is effectively done, because what is it? It's just a REPL. And I think tools like Rebel, and there's been some other cool REPL-based experiments. I think there's the beautiful idea, if you really make a great REPL, adding meta features, adding auto-completion, all this other stuff can be done as a second step. It doesn't need to be done in the core. And that's what I'm really trying to do. I want a very simple zero configuration tool that gives us a REPL to React Native. And after that, it's done. And I want it to be so simple that if you want to build a Rebel thing, or you want to build an inspector, or you want to add Rebel readline, that adding stuff to Krell should require a person to spend maybe a long afternoon reading the code base. That's the maximum amount of time you should spend understanding how Krell works. And that's completely depends on Krell remaining small and doing very little.
One of the things that was a problem, if I remember rightly, though, David, was these updates of React Native.
Yeah, but that's because with Renatal was pinned. Renatal, because Renatal did a lot of code gen for you. The code gen would produce the templates and set the versions, and it did a lot of things, which Krell just says no, because what happens is that Renatal became stuck because you need the maintainer, if not the maintainer, somebody to step up as a maintainer to update Renatal to allow people to migrate. And that requires a lot of, just a lot of work. And so with Krell, I basically said I didn't want us to take on that burden. So Krell does not know anything about the React Native version. You just have to maintain the React Native version yourself, which is actually a good thing. It's a good thing because awesome. now the problem is not in the tool. Every user is free to upgrade React Native, and Krell may need minor changes, but because it doesn't depend too much on the React Native version, that should be fairly straightforward. I will say though, as a word of caution to people that are interested in Krell, you really do need to update to the latest React Native. Krell assumes that you're at least on the 0.60 version of React Native, because that's when React Native solved the auto-linking problem, which is using native libraries with Android and iOS prior to auto-linking was terrible. I mean, you had to modify all your build files, you had to modify your source code, you had to modify linking X code. I mean, it was a complete and total nightmare to use third-party libraries that needed native support. It was just unusable. That's the only way to describe it. Unusable. React Native now does this thing called auto-linking, and people are doing this amazing thing, right? They're being like, I'm going to make a zeroconf library that uses Java zeroconf and iOS zeroconf, MDNS, whatever. That's a React Native library that automatically links in the native components that are needed for the JVM or for iOS. So that means the native integration story is way simpler. And I just think that really you should upgrade anyway, because again, I think the way that it was done before was extremely hard to maintain.
So the native stuff, I'm not sure if you saw or followed Flutter from Google.
I do follow Flutter. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So then I'm really curious about your impression of it, because I recently got back, quote unquote, into iOS development. I think I did something like 10 years ago. I built a couple of apps in Objective-C, and now I'm learning Swift, because I was never a fan of using these frameworks that is going to produce for both things, and I've never used React Native. So how do you compare React Native with Flutter? Of course, there is a language difference, but other than that, so how do you see the comparison there?
I mean, I would say Flutter is a direct competitor, and to be honest, I think Flutter is probably in many. I mean, it needs to be assessed, but to be honest, my initial impression, it's probably a better solution in the long run. So something that happened with Flutter, which is actually pretty exciting, is that they started doing desktop support. So Flutter is now it's not only a way to do native stuff on the device, on Android and on iOS. And also, I wouldn't be surprised if performance is better, especially on Android, right? That's always a concern, is how do you get really good mobile performance on Android?
Yeah.
But my impression is that it's quite good. All the things you expect from React Native exist. For example, hot code reloading works, even if you're untethered and all this stuff. So there are many pluses for Flutter, and now that they're slowly getting serious about desktop development, I do see a lot of potential there.
Yeah.
And it does need to be followed pretty closely. If it ends up becoming very exciting in terms of if we start seeing a lot of market adoption, then this is a longer thing. It's not any time in the near future, but I've often mentioned to the community that it would be great to see a new emitter for ClojureScript that emits Dart. Right, Dart lets you hot code reload. Right, Dart lets you, in the same way that the JVM lets you reload bytecode. Dart actually does. There's no exposed bytecode, but Dart lets you reload Dart files, and it will do the correct thing. It will reload instead of changing the state. It just reloads the classes and the methods, which is exactly the type of reloading that you want to get a Lisp-like experience. So it's definitely something to follow. And, if it turns out that it's a runaway hit, I can imagine in 4 or 5 years that there's a ClojureScript Dart, and that's an extremely popular option. I don't know. My opinion is that, it's truly sad, right? JVM was supposed to be this thing. Like, if you really think about it, JVM was supposed to be this thing where you could write this thing anywhere. It's just not true.
Right on running.
It's just not true. JVM is great for server stuff. It stinks when you want to do lightweight stuff. It stinks when you want to do clients. And if Flutter ends up being a really great universal UI lightweight thing, that would be cool. That would be cool. And also, Flutter, nothing against the JavaScript ecosystem, but, something I've never liked about JavaScript, it's just my opinion, is that there's no taste, right? It's just like a ubiquitous lack of taste. Yes, JavaScript is useful. It works. But, it's really, as overall, my opinion is that it's like complexity gone amok. It's a necessary evil. That's what JavaScript is to me. JavaScript, NPM, Node, it's a necessary evil. You incur a lot of complexity by adopting it, but maybe it's the only solution for you. Something like Dart, honestly, at this point seems simpler. It seems more straightforward. The community is smaller. It seems more tightly controlled. And there are downsides, of course, maybe for contribution and, the sort of like, the bazaar. Maybe there's problems with that, like that philosophy. But the benefit I see is that you have a simpler ecosystem and possibly a more coherent ecosystem. So that's
what
another
do you
thing.
Think about
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, how do you compare it to TypeScript, for example?
So TypeScript, right? TypeScript did the thing that we did, which was it's like, we're okay with dealing with all the bad stuff, right? TypeScript doesn't do anything about the bad stuff, right? It throws up its hand and says, we're going to add types. That'll solve all your problems. And it doesn't solve all your problems, right? You still have all the other problems you had before. So, again, like the fact that, that really the other reason why I think Dart is pretty cool is because in the end, I think Lars Bach, the lead architect of that project, the language designer, he worked on the JVM and he was a small talker, right? His heritage is in small talk. And by association, effectively that's a Lisp-like viewpoint, right? That types are great, they can be useful, but you should never give up dynamism. Dart VM is clearly a language design, a VM that's targeted around the idea of dynamism. Why else would they have hot code reloading, right? The only point of having hot code reloading is to have a system that's dynamic. It's alive, right? That's why they did it that way. And I think that Dart has its head, in the right place. And I think that Lars, there are things that I don't like about Dart, but it doesn't matter, right? That's the beautiful thing about Clojure. If it's a good platform, we don't really care that much about linguistic choices because that's not what we're going to be using anyway. If the tooling is simple, if the runtime is simple, then maybe it's a good target. I'm not saying it is yet because I haven't spent a lot of time with Dart. I can't really say that with any confidence yet.
Yeah.
But there are lots of things that I like about it. And again, to Vijay's point, is that like, wow, the Flutter thing is actually pretty compelling. It's pretty compelling because Flutter gives you this React Native style development. It gives you that style of functional style components, it appears to give you a much simpler sort of build system. So definitely something to look at.
And also I think in terms of because I was thinking to build something, and then I thought, okay, obviously iOS being 20-30% of the market, and then 80% of the market is Android, and I dabbled with Flutter when they released, I think, the first version at some point. I was thinking, okay, maybe I should lean towards Flutter because the whole experience, as you said, is really good. I mean, just download the IDE, and then the reloading and the emulators and everything is much more coherent, compared to React Native stuff, or I think back in the day the Apache project, forgot the name, something, to do the cross-platform thing. But for me, I think there is also the risk of um, especially iOS being, they control the walled garden of iOS is controlled by Swift and everything. And for me, I always have this fear of, if I invest a lot in Flutter, then if the shit breaks on iOS for some reason, Apple, pulling the carpet under your under your feet,
they would never do that.
Fucked.
Come on.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm skeptical, but again, I think that's why even if we did do a thing with Dart, it would always be an option anyway, because JavaScript's not going to go anywhere, and I definitely think that the effort to run on Dart probably wouldn't. That sounds like a couple of months of work. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's just instead of generating JavaScript, you're going to generate Dart, and there's there's a lot of stuff to remove because we definitely have a lot of things around JavaScript.
Yeah.
But if you really, but really, to ClojureScript's credit, ClojureScript has a very large integration with Google Closure. But for example, if you look at something like Shadow uses only the analyzer and the compiler. It uses none of our build stuff, and that's actually shows that it's not ClojureScript's code base is not perfect, but there is, I believe, enough separation in ClojureScript itself already to decouple these things so that targeting Dart should be reasonably feasible without too much pain. Actually, and if somebody started on that, it would also be good because it would allow us to make that a bit more clean, so that the next person that wants to come along and do it has a much easier time, right? So there's other benefits as well.
So I think that would be super fun as well, because using Clojure, of course, React Native has, as you said, a lot of ClojureScript compatibility, or you can just write. I remember, I think Kevin was one of the first persons who was building ClojureScript mobile applications. Now the story is much more, I think, easier to build ClojureScript driven mobile apps, and as you guys are building already. And I think if we can target to other platforms like Dart, I think then using Flutter plus ClojureScript would be an amazing experience, right?
Yeah. It's definitely a cool idea. My hope is that somebody else works on it.
This is trying to tell people that, hey, try it out. It's awesome.
No, try it out.
But
and
I think,
also,
isn't it like
yeah.
Go on, David.
Go ahead. No, go. Ray, go ahead.
No, go on, please.
No, just
I was just going to say it's a okay. Go on.
Okay, now we're on a deadlock.
Please.
All I was going to say was that I'd be happy to see that be an open source effort, and I'd be happy to make changes to make sure that ClojureScript is well separated enough for that to work. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that because all these kind of other targets are definitely very tempting these days, because the other one that's coming up that we've talked about before is WebAssembly. That could be an interesting target as well, given the fact that it's relatively small in terms of scope, It's not ready yet by the looks of things, I know, but it's getting cooked. It's coming in the browsers, and the GC is getting there, and other bits and pieces. What do you think about that potential as a target for ClojureScript?
I mean, I think, to be honest, I think the thing about that is that I think the first step would be, what I would like to see actually, and if I was going to do it, my opinion is that what we want is a dialect of ClojureScript that's specifically for WebAssembly. It's not actually like ClojureScript. It's actually a dialect for writing WebAssembly directly. I actually, like, if you think about it, that's actually kind of what you would want to write, because you want to write some high performance code, and you would like to write in something that basically is a DSL for WASM. Like you have the basic semantics. It's not low level like WASM. WASM's super low level, but it's a higher level dialect of WASM that looks almost like ClojureScript. So you can write high performance modules in ClojureScript. That I think would be pretty interesting. Otherwise, I don't see, besides that, I don't see much else that we would want to do. Until the performance is better on a wider variety of targets. Like, people have always said, compile to WASM, but there's just a lot of trade-offs there. And that would really be for a very specific audience.
Yeah.
So the one last one that I know that I think you're friends with Ramsey and Co, who are doing the games.
Yeah, Arcadia.
Tim's.
Arcadia, yeah. And they're friends of the show. With Tim's and stuff like that.
Over the 4 years, we have built so many relationships with everyone.
Oh man. Anyway, yeah. So I think they're looking at like degenerating the C# stuff, and that seems like an interesting space as well.
Oh yeah, I think the Arcadia stuff's been really cool. I mean, I feel like they've gone a lot farther with the C# stuff than anybody else, and that's also another possibility. I mean, we'll see. I definitely think that it's something that since C# is now cross-platform, and there's an officially cross-platform, that's also something to consider. In the end, it's like I say, like, there are lots of fun projects to hack on.
Right. Yes.
There are a lot of fun projects to hack on, but I think a lot of what I would like to see really is, going back, because the Dart is a really concrete example, is just that, is there a demand from the existing user base, right?
Right. Yeah.
What's the demand? The only time we would take something on, to be honest, is that if in 4 years or 5 years from now, we're like, we just think Dart is superior. It's superior, and we're making a bet. It's like when Rich Hickey said, JVM is a better target for what we want, what we want to do and how we want to do it. And it may be in 4 or 5 years, we're just like, actually, we're just tired. We're just collectively tired of there only being JavaScript, and we believe that we could do everything we're doing currently, and it could be way simpler. We're going to officially support Dart because, and I'm not saying we're going to do that, but I'm saying those are the reasons why we would do it. Those are the reasons why we do it. Because we, as a community, believe, or I believe as the maintainer, that there's a huge opportunity to show the world there's a better way to do the same stuff that you've been doing.
Yeah.
I guess you have to have a very big platform as well. You'd have to feel like it was really justifiable.
And that's why there's no rush. That's why there's no rush with Dart, because it really has to feel like that people are, in fact, there's an opportunity. If you see people abandoning JavaScript because they're tired of it, then it's time, right? The moment that people begin assessing other technologies because they're no longer willing to put up with the complexity, which is already happening. It's already happening. But you want to see more movement. You definitely want to see more movement than there is right at this moment.
But it is still surprising how much pain, as a community, we can tolerate given the amount of JavaScript libraries and trying to patch these holes around this whole. I think that whole developer experience, as you said, it's not a there is no taste, for the all the stuff that is proliferation of every problem being solved in a million ways. So maybe it will change. I don't know. I'm not doing much of the front end development because most of the stuff I do is in ClojureScript, so I don't touch much of the JavaScript at all. So I was just curious with the iOS stuff and then Flutter and these kind of things. So we talked a lot about all the mobile stuff and everything, but ClojureScript, at least looking back, shot into fame, or we got our big push because of the React stuff, right, on the web. So where do you think the web stuff is going, or what do you see for the web related technologies?
I mean, to be honest, I mean, actually, for the web stuff, I think React Native is like what is this? What do they call it? It's like a local optimum, right? It's like it's like actually the
React stuff.
There's so many different things, and it's really I find them largely uninteresting, right? I feel like when you have something like React out there, unless something's truly doing something that's game changing, which I haven't seen anything yet, to be honest. There's not much reason for me to look elsewhere, because again, React lets us write functional code, right? Functional UIs. That's like, I mean, like that's like the holy grail. We were given the holy grail with respect to doing UI programming. We can do functional UI programming. This is something that people have been wanting to do for years, and it was a research problem. And that's not true anymore. Like every ClojureScript programmer out there is writing functional UIs. Like is completely normal. I think that I can imagine incremental improvements, but it's hard for me to see. It's hard for me to see right at the moment doing much better than what we've done. Also, Flutter, Swift, everybody has adopted this pattern. So clearly, this is that was the step evolution, right? There was if you really think about it, there was nothing for 30 years. Like not since Xerox PARC. No, since Xerox PARC, you had Model View Controller. You had Model View Controller since 1979, 2015, 35 years later, you had functional views. So it took 35 years to make one step. I'm not holding my breath. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I don't think you're gonna see anything interesting for quite some time.
Yeah, so I think I will retire with this paradigm, I suppose.
Before we go on about that, don't you think, like, because React themselves have been, maybe is it again more local Maxima stuff, but they've been changing some of their framework quite heavily with with hooks and stuff like this. Do you think that's just kind of like syntax sugar, or do you think it's deeper, David?
I mean, that stuff, the hooks, honestly, the hooks thing was something that we asked for when React first came out. I was like, oh man, we have to do all this object-oriented bridging. I mean, it's trivial for the library, the ClojureScript binding, to hide the details of that. But all hooks let you do, hooks let you write without writing objects, right? In some sense, it was how we wanted to interact with React. Now it's officially supported. So it was really something that we wanted, but now we have it. Yeah. So I only see it as a plus. It simply simplifies integration. There's actually a few, I think, open source libraries that are now even thinner wrappers around React that simply let you write ClojureScript with hooks.
Right, yeah.
So it's all good. I mean, that stuff's great. I mean, but again, because it's for simply removing one layer that we had to do. It's not a dramatic change. It's just like an incremental improvement.
I think maybe that's the other thing that you're doing with like these tools, is having a very kind of like largely unopinionated view on the higher level concepts.
Yeah, for sure. Like you're talking about like Krell and stuff. Like
Yeah.
just um I think now after like it's been 5 years of React. Um
Hmm.
5 years or maybe longer. 6 years? Yeah,
Yeah, maybe even. Yeah.
No, 6.5. Yeah, okay. Something like that. But anyways, now I feel like I feel like I observed what was going on, and I'm taking the stance that we should do less. I mean, this goes
Hmm.
back to Bundle, right? Bundle says we don't know
Yeah.
what people are going to do. Let's generate something that works for everybody. Krell says I don't know what you're going to want to do with React Native. We're going to make very small number of decisions, um,
Hmm.
and make it easy to make downstream decisions. So
Mm.
um, making as few choices as possible.
And let the upstream kind of innovate without
Yeah,
really getting the kind of infrastructure tooling sort of knotted up in it. Yeah.
exactly.
Mm. So in terms of the paradigm or the design, I'm not sure if we want to call it design pattern because it has a lot of connotation around it. So the way we design web applications using the functional UI. So other than that, I think the rest of the stuff is just how the language evolution, right? For example, if you take Reason ML, so how do you see that compared to Dart or compared to ClojureScript?
I mean, Reason ML doesn't seem like it does anything important other than the type stuff. I mean, if you're into
Hmm.
types, then it does the type stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, that's also why I find it's like this thing. It's like the most important innovations for actually making the software. It's not the types anyway, right? React is an untyped thing, right? That I mean,
Yeah.
like, you don't need types to invent a UI paradigm. It's great
Yeah.
if you like types. It's great. You want the checking and all that stuff to happen. But in the
Hmm.
end, I mean, in my opinion, real innovation, it does not matter if it's typed or untyped, right? React could have been created
Yeah.
could have been made in a typed language, and you would have
Yeah.
instantly said, wow, that's amazing. You can make that work in
Hmm.
any language. Sure, you have types, but the critical part of the thing, it does not matter because that part is not, the types don't matter with that part. Right. So,
Yeah.
but Reason ML, I'm not saying anything bad about Reason ML. I just think that Reason ML is really cool, but it's, if you like OCaml, if you want an updated,
Yeah.
cool looking OCaml, great. I don't see it contributing anything meaningful other than being like an updated OCaml. If meaningful in that, if that's your cup of tea, cool.
Yeah. I think that the as you said, it makes sense that the idea is now implemented in different flavors in different languages. So
Yeah,
whatever the language that you use, you're still following the same the new evolutionary idea that you use this functional UI, whether you use Swift, whether you use Dart, whether you use ClojureScript or ReasonML. Yeah,
exactly.
that I think. Yeah, yeah. So coming back to the one of the the biggest project that you're working on, so ClojureScript, you were saying that the open source maintainer's dream or open source creator's dream is that you want to move to a done, quote unquote, done level and then keep
Mhm.
maintaining it. So what do you see for ClojureScript? I mean, where are we at? And then are there any plans that you have, bit of a vision around
Well,
ClojureScript?
I mean, I think I mean, when I say done, I mean libraries, tools
Yeah,
that are
exactly.
clearly finite. I mean, language
Yeah.
projects really have, they have the raw end of the deal with respect to maintenance, because, I mean,
Mm,
there's always going to be like, there may be ecosystem things we need to address, or Clojure adds a new feature and we need to add it, or you know, oh man, there's always tons of bugs, right? I mean, it's like,
yeah.
fortunately, there's not so many major bugs, but I think we have hundreds. We have hundreds of minor bugs, like for ClojureScript. I mean,
Mm,
hundreds of minor bugs, which I just don't have time to look at. So there's always going to be stuff to do. I mean, if I was only fixing minor bugs, I'd be busy for probably 2 years, right? Um,
yeah.
so I think it's hard to achieve the done state with a language project. Um, but I'm feeling, to be honest, I'm feeling pretty good about Bundle. I think Bundle answers one of the biggest questions that I had. I mean, I've had that problem
Mm,
and that question floating on my mind for at least 4 or 5 years. There's another thing that we want to work on, which is smaller, but I think will also help around how we require libraries. Because right now it's a bit annoying with third party stuff, specifically with like stuff from node modules or global libraries, importing that stuff into ClojureScript. You can't really do it. So I want to solve that problem. But otherwise, I don't see much, other than fixing bugs, performance, cleaning up the APIs. I mean, there's like boring stuff, like things like there is a part of ClojureScript that's crufty, like meaning for downstream users, for the typical user, they wouldn't care. But Shadow did this cool thing, which is Shadow has a very functional build pipeline, right? You can take any compilation unit and it has a true data-oriented pipeline. Each step of the compiler produces data, which can be passed on to the next step in the pipeline. For various reasons, all of them historical, ClojureScript, it's not very disciplined. The build pipeline is not disciplined. There are many different points where we write to disk. And what it means is that the build stuff in ClojureScript is so unfunctional, you can't use it as a library. It's almost impossible to use as a library, meaning it's very difficult for somebody who is a ClojureScript expert that wants to do things in a slightly different way at the build step of their project to do anything custom, because you have to know too much about what happens when, and that's and that's not just a problem for would-be tooling developers. It's a problem for me because I forget how the thing works. I can never remember how it works. It's impossible. So that's not really that's not so much user-facing as tooling developer-facing and internal maintenance, simplifying our internal maintenance. I would like to redo the build pipeline to adopt the Shadow functional build pipeline. So we wouldn't just copy what they have, but we would say that's a solid idea. ClojureScript should only have data, and writing to disk should only be a final side effect. But that's a big project, actually. That's a big project. That requires changing a lot of code.
Yeah, totally. And also, it's also a trade-off, right? I mean, how much benefit that it is going to give and the impact of it. Because if most of the people who are using ClojureScript don't need to plug into this thing or understand this stuff, then...
Yeah, but if it helps him, though, VJ, it's quite a good benefit.
So, that's true. That's true.
So that's really, in some sense, that's the problem with this project. That's why it's been delayed for so long, even though I've been thinking about it for, again, 4 or 5 years. It has no immediate impact. But as Ray says, eventually the burden of maintenance, it's like, it's preventing me from working on the thing. So it has to be addressed at some point. In fact, it's probably that if anything was going to get worked on that was major, that would probably be the biggest project within the next year or two, because that would ease our own maintenance burden.
If I say that most of the ClojureScript work is around tooling or the compiler level work, because given the nature that it is a Lisp, so there won't be much of the language level changes, right? Because that needs to closely follow Clojure. Is that a correct assumption?
No. There. Again, there's one thing that we're going to do, but that's around the NS form, and I can explain that really quick.
Sure. Oh no, just take your time.
No, it's really quick. So it's a quick explanation. So in Java, because you have packages, you're the language, even at the VM level, there's a sort of disciplined notion of importing, because that's enforced at the notion of Java packages in the class path. But that's not how JavaScript works. That's just not how JavaScript works. JavaScript, Node.js stuff, it's all relative paths. And then even more in a more troublesome way, there is no specific way to describe the structure of your library, right? There really isn't, right? So there are many things inside of a library, in a JavaScript library, that may in fact be a nested library, right? Right. There's no way to know, is that a JavaScript object or is it a nested library?
Yeah.
There's no way to know. There's no way to know that, right? And in fact, it's quite common that I want to use something from a JavaScript library, but that library is actually a nested library, a nested series of namespaces. But I can't get at the inner namespace and use that as the library that's under consideration. I can't require the nested thing. So I had a big conversation around the last release saying, I want to fix this. And we got amazing feedback. Thomas Heller gave some really good feedback. A lot of the ClojureScript users gave a lot of good feedback. So we're going to have a syntax for reaching into any library and saying, I want to use this part of the object that's the library. I want to use a sub-object as the library. And that's actually really cool, because now it does not matter how nested the thing I'm importing is. I can always treat some sub-property of the nested object as the library that I care about. Because there was no way to do this. You could use property access, but now you no longer can use NS name stuff. You can't use refer. You can't use rename. You can't use, there's all these things you can't use if you can't use the NS form. You have to, bring them into defs, and it's very ugly, right? Because what's the point of doing that? The whole point of having the NS form is to have structure around the usage of the library. So this feature would allow you to add structure to things we couldn't add structure to before. The other thing that's related is that you can now require global libraries. So currently, when you have a global, you have to say JS/ and your code is littered with JS/this, JS/that, and it's ugly, right? It's so ugly. So now we would be able to say there is a property, a global property, and you want to treat that as a lib, and you can use refer, rename, all that stuff as well. So we would be able to lift almost every pattern that people are using, either intermediate definitions or they're using globals. Those can all be moved into the NS form. So it's actually not going to be a lot of work, and to be honest, I think it's a huge feature. It's been something we should now that I see the light, I'm like, oh man, we should have had that 5 years ago. But that's an easy one. That's coming.
But syntactically, it's not going to deviate from Clojure NS form, right? NS macro. It's going to be pretty much the same, except that
it's going to be the same. Syntactically, it's going to be the same, but we'll have it. It's basically requires a little bit of special handling, which Clojure doesn't have, but it won't look any different. It won't look any different.
Okay.
No, well, that's the win, though, isn't it? That is the huge win, is that you can you can align everything more closely.
Yeah, for me, it's been like this thing. It's been a sore thumb, the fact that we don't have a way to avoid these unidiomatic things because it's ClojureScript. So with this change, a lot more code can look just like Clojure. A lot more code.
Yeah. That's nice. So, any other long-term plans for ClojureScript?
No, I really can't think of anything. I mean, I'm glad you brought up the Dart stuff, because it was funny. That's totally it must be in the air, because I really was looking at it the other day. I was like, oh man, Dart looks pretty cool. It looks simple.
Yeah,
that was why.
It is.
I was like, because I've been doing all this React Native stuff, but it's not time. I don't think it's time yet. But other than that, No, I mean, to be honest, I'm actually really excited. I'm really excited about ClojureScript. I mean, at Vouch, it's been so. I mean, it's really sort of rewarding to be able to use ClojureScript every day for all these problems. I mean, we're literally using ClojureScript for so many things. It's kind of astounding how many things we use it for. And I
mean, it's a good thing, right? Because now your own, as they say, you're drinking your own wine, or
exactly.
I don't want to use the dog food metaphor. That's shitty. It's a shitty metaphor.
Or eating your own dog food. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a shitty metaphor. So I was thinking, you're brewing your own beer and then drinking it. So that's much better. So I think it's good that you're going through quote unquote pain. So you're fixing that for the wider community. So that's a good thing, I think.
It's a service we bring as Vouch.
We're all vouching for it.
Yeah. Probably the only other thing is performance. Like, every now and then we do performance spikes. Like, it's nicer when actually there is another thing, which is like better caching. Like right now, caching could be a lot better. Like builds, we could do builds could be faster in that if you've built something once, we should never recompile it. So currently if your build gets corrupted, everybody blows away the target directory, and then we do everything from scratch. But that's actually silly. Like, why should we recompile things just because you erased the target directory? So there's another project, which is an easy project too, which will be the local cache. There'll be a project local cache, which is not the target directory. So when you blow away target, we're like, who cares? We're not going to recompile that stuff. We're just going to move it over from the cache.
I was going to say, I have a feeling that the performance work that you and Mike especially have been doing is actually something which Clojure can benefit from. The class path stuff and the caching stuff. It seems to me like I know there's definitely innovation coming from Clojure, but seems like there's quite a lot of innovation going on in ClojureScript as well.
It's true. I mean, another to your point though. I think another thing that would be interesting would be, a cool way to try that is, to be honest, is that somebody should experiment with a tool that just integrates with deps, or is a new command that it's just a wrapper around deps that says, what we're going to do is we're going to compile your dependencies for you behind the scenes and cache them. I agree. I mean, a lot of the complaints about startup time are just recompiling. I mean, a lot of so a lot of people don't know, like, ClojureScript is distributed as an AOT artifact, which is slightly annoying sometimes because transit's in there. But it normally doesn't matter because everybody keeps transit up to date, so it's not a big deal. But the reason I did this is because, at least on my old iMac, which was a 3.4 gigahertz iMac, compiling ClojureScript every time took 8 seconds. That's right. Every command that triggered the ClojureScript compiler would lose 8 seconds just compiling ClojureScript. AOT ClojureScript loads in 1 second, so it's eight times faster to load ClojureScript AOT. Right, 8 times faster. So that really means that for large Clojure projects, you're really getting burned if you're loading, if you're recompiling all your dependencies. It's really a massive waste of time. It would be great to see people adopt ClojureScript strategy of compiling that stuff, caching it, and just loading that stuff.
Incremental,
I think it's a fairly interesting way to do it. I mean, you do have to be smart with the cache. Like, we use version numbers and there's all this stuff that we do to make sure that you're going to get the right thing. But I agree that that's a ripe area for people's day-to-day experience to be more responsive.
Yeah, because I mean, it seems like like the lesson of immutable data structures is this like lesson that actually having things change looks like it should cost a lot, but in the end doesn't cost a lot. And it feels like there are some lessons to be learned, like dog fooding, like you were saying, BJ, in the kind of tooling
so drinking
space
your own wine.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, whining. Yeah, you were whining? No. But I really like the stuff that the people like Mikhail Borkent is doing in the Graal VM, because that's showing a lot of potential there for super fast startup time,
Oh yeah. I definitely think there's. I mean, that's in some sense that ball is in the Clojure side of the court,
Sure,
but
sure.
I definitely know that Alex is aware. I think he knows this is one. I think this comes up in the surveys. I mean, I think this is one of the biggest complaints is that's not like error messages, right? It's like, we would like our process to start up faster, and I think that I suspect that this will get worked on. Alex is very aware. But at the same time, to your point, as you know, I constantly try to convince people to solve their own problem. Like, right? It's just like, man, you could just build a tool. You could just build a wrapper around CLJ, I bet, that does this thing, and you can at least vet what are the problems one would encounter. And And how does it really feel better day to day? Or are there other problems we need to solve?
Mm.
You know?
Mm.
Yeah, well, I think that's what Mikhail Bokent has done with this small closure interpreter.
Yeah, definitely.
You know?
Definitely.
Yeah. It's really amazing. But what I was going to say was actually the other thing was this, because I mentioned it, that kind of came up into my head, which was the Graal VM, because that's obviously got a JavaScript engine as well.
Yeah, Graal.js, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, in theory, this notion of going back to like the painful times of dynamic reloading. What was this technology called?
Jitterbug.
No, well, there was a sort of standard around it that.
There?
Yeah. Oh my god.
In
It
Java?
was like a Java thing,
Yeah.
JVM thing.
There was a JVM thing, and there was a bunch of like ISO standards. It's for Internet of Things actually, where you could have reloadable code.
Okay.
Oh man, it's like ODMI or something. I can't remember the name of the damn thing now.
Oh yeah, maybe.
So this is the wrong acronym, but it's something along those lines where you could just
OSGI.
OSGI.
Yes. Yeah.
Fire.
Equinox and Eclipse and then
blah blah
OSGI.
blah.
Yes.
You worked it out.
Well,
Yeah.
you got 2 characters right. Not bad. You're halfway there.
Bit of fuzzy logic with some smart people. We got
almost
there.
You only lost half of the characters, so not bad. Yeah.
So because that's an interesting technology, where you can just drop a new version of something in and bam, it picks it up. Because that, it got way too complicated. But the Graal
it did.
stuff, ridiculous. But the Graal stuff looks like that's got some legs as well,
No, I do, and they've accomplished something that, to be honest, many efforts have never achieved. Rhino couldn't do it. Nashorn really couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But Graal has shown that much better than Nashorn, that they were able to really narrow the gap between their implementation and Node. Definitely for peak for performance. And I know that they're constantly working on this startup time problem. So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
But I think it's all the charm. Yeah, it's very cool. It's very interesting.
Okay, so I think 1.5 hours almost. We are reaching another record.
You said you could talk for an hour, David, and you've broken your own record there.
By the way, I know, David, you I think last time you were on the podcast, I mean, it seems like ages ago, and at that time you were also doing some music with your band, right? Is it still continuing, or are you doing something in music side as well?
I'm not in New York right now. It's like there's not that much going on at the moment because doing stuff online, it's like your internet connection has to be good and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm still doing stuff, and my collaborator is still doing stuff, but there's not much collaboration happening at the moment. But no, but in terms of being active, we're active. Like we I don't know, like 6 months ago, we got a studio and stuff, and we moved all our gear in there, and so there's stuff that's happening. Hopefully, it's going to be. I think for musicians, it's going to be a pretty slow year, right? The next 12 months, it's going to be slow.
Yeah.
I just don't see venues and all the other things that you need for live music coming back for some time. So, it means that, get in the studio, do a lot of recording, do some live streams. I mean, that's probably what we'll end up doing. We'll record a lot. We'll do some live streams. But it's good. It's a chance to hunker down and write. Just, you gotta make do with what you got.
Cool. So I think we can I think we can close on that musical note for for now. It's really, really nice to have you back on the show, David. I mean, it's always a pleasure, and it's good that you're staying safe and everybody is doing good. Good to know that as well. And thanks a lot for sharing your ideas and also all the contribution that you're doing. So the GitHub sponsor thing, is it just going to your user account on GitHub, right? And then click the sponsor button.
It just goes to my GitHub account. And also, to be clear, right, the other person you should contribute to is Mike Fikes, right? So, I do, what I do is I generally do like, yes, this patch, no, not this patch. Somebody wants to talk about it. we'll talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I've also, for people that are listening to this podcast, if you're a user of ClojureScript and you have a question or you have a bug, use askclojure.org. I believe that it's askclojure.org. That's the new Stack Overflow style official website that's maintained by Alex Miller from Cognitech.
Yeah.
So bugs and feature requests, suggestions, all that stuff should go there. I have my RSS reader hooked up to that. Every question that comes in now, I'm looking at that. So I do that stuff. I'm constantly doing community wrangling and working on new features and looking at the survey, figuring out where work needs to go, managing release and all that stuff. But Mike Fikes does a lot. So the thing is that's what I just described is a massive demand on my time. So that means I don't have that much time to look at Jira, make sure the patch passed all the tests, that CI is working, that we have a matrix of open source projects that reruns every time we push to GitHub. There's all this other stuff that needs to be done. Testing tickets. There's, Mike does a lot of that stuff. There's all this secondary stuff that I just don't have time for that Mike does. So it's really both of us that really keep the lights on around the ClojureScript project. And that's of course not to say, to downplay patches that come in. Patches do come in for contributors, but in the end, they have funneled through Mike, and then they get to me, and then we have to manage that process once the patch gets there. There's all the long tail of work that has to happen for each small contribution that comes in. So if you're going to contribute, I would say contribute something to me that you believe is reasonable for whatever whatever you represent, a company, an individual, and do the same thing for Mike. It's really both of us that keep the project alive. Again, as the sort of the process side of things. I'd also like to, I'm not sure when, but of course, as things move along, it'd be nice to investigate some way to give back to individual contributors. Would be another one thing for us to look at. Like maybe there's a pool, we make a thing just around ClojureScript, and that pool is only for people who are contributing patches. My concern about that is that, that's probably given the amount of contribution that happens, which is not small. Maybe that'll end up being not that much to go around. The other thing that I'd really like to see is I'd really like to see the ClojureScript community in general. Hopefully ClojureScript can be a model, right? That, one way is to we're making millions of dollars with ClojureScript. We'll give David and Mike $200 each. Okay, that's cool. But actually, I think a smarter way for all open source communities, think about it. It would be better for me if I was getting $5 from 1,000 users of ClojureScript, right? It's better if I'm getting $5 from everybody that uses ClojureScript, or every company that uses ClojureScript gives me $5. Every company that uses ClojureScript gives Mike Fikes $5. Every company gives Bruce Howman $5, right? To me, the only sustainable model isn't every huge company giving a couple people a large lump sum. It's saying these are the tools we use. We're using Figwheel, we're using Shadow, we're using ClojureScript, we're using HTTP Kit. Well, send freaking $5 to those developers. Come on. That's literally a coffee a month. But if everybody does it, wow, that's great. So in some sense, I think that the individual sponsor or maintainer model is great if companies and individuals distribute a small amount and everybody collectively does it, than sending large lump sums to particular people.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So go and check out David's GitHub account and also Mike Fikes, and the way you can contribute or sponsor. And it's not only to show our how grateful we are, the amount of work that you guys are putting in, but also it's much more, as David, you said, it's much more sustainable when there is a large group of people are contributing. And obviously ClojureScript has crossed that critical number a long time ago in terms of users. So go ahead and do that if you have not done it yet.
But again, I want to reiterate. If you're a Clojure script or Clojure tool maintainer, make a sponsorship account. And really, I think as a community, we could be a model. I think there are many ways in that Clojure and Clojure script is a model. I think the complexity thing, we're a model for people who are looking to reduce complexity. I also think, given that we're still a reasonable size of community, it would be great to see Clojure and Clojure script community show that there's a better way to do open source, and it's a version of open source that really everybody gives a little bit, and then we all get something.
Yeah, I mean, it's more sustainable instead of people losing the interest or projects dying because of various reasons. So,
I mean, people don't just do things for the money, but it certainly helps.
Oh yeah, of course.
Especially if it's like taking time away from your family and stuff like that. To give like a day a week or 2 days a week or a lot more. This is not nothing. I think
it's not only is it not nothing. I just want to say, I mean, I follow Clojurists Together, and Clojurists Together is really great. Daniel Compton does it.
Yeah.
But they only do like 3 or 4 people, 3 projects, not people, projects. They do 3 or 4 projects. I mean, people apply, but I looked and there's like 30 or 40 projects that apply that don't get it. So my honest impression is that there are many projects in the ClojureScript community that need support. And that it's really not just about sending money to ClojureScript. I'd say if there's any tool, I know that there are other maintainers that have been working on things for years, just like we have, that could use your support just as much as we can.
Good call. Yeah, totally. Okay, so I think everything that needs to be said. I think David, I just second. I think what you said. So.
Sorry for making. I made the podcast 15 minutes longer.
Hey, we don't mind. we are
I worry for your listeners. Oh man, God, David.
I mean, they're happy that you're here. Otherwise, they would have to listen to Ray trying to remember stuff and me trying to figure out what to say. So.
OSGI, mate. Come on, we got there.
Anyway, so thanks a lot, David, again, and hopefully we'll do one more episode with you. Not with this amount of gap, like 2 years or something, but pretty soon again.
Cool.
So stay safe, and that's it from us for this episode. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of DefN. And the awesome vegetarian music or the track is Melon Hamburger by Pizzeri. And the show's audio is mixed by Wouter Dullert. I'm pretty sure I butchered his name. Maybe you should insert your own name here, Dullert.
Uta.
If you'd like to support us, please do check out our Patreon page. And you can show your appreciation to all the hard work or the lack of hard work that we're doing. And you can also catch up with either Ray, with me, for some unexplainable reason. You want to interact with us, then do check us out on Slack, Clojurian Slack or Clojureverse, or on Zulip, or just at us at DefN Podcast on Twitter. Enjoy your day and see you in the next episode.